disasters in oceans in general. This can be basically, maybe you want to look at it as a wrap up. Could be collisions because of navigation errors, could be because of rough weather, could be because of equipment breakdown, cooling system can break down, as a result engine would break down. You can have missing drain plugs. Um, as you guys mentioned, you can have human errors, um, which is the worst liability. You can have war and piracy. And the most common reason, I guess everybody knows, that it's the human error. So just take a look at the numbers. When I was looking at it, it was quite higher than I was expecting. Um, so if you look at it, these are by the way, the numbers are from the Guardian. If you look at the numbers of losses from January 1st of 2013 until the end of December of that year, you have one collision, you have 11 case of stranded ships, you have 11 case of fire explosions and 2 machinery failure, and then 69 were actually sunk, which I think is pretty high. And if you take a look, the second one shows the number of accidents and sunk and foundered during the years for about the 10 years. And if you look at it, it seems like there is a bit of a drop. Why do you think that happened? Is that the ships got safer, or technology got better, or what do you think? It's like kind of stable and then all of a sudden it drops. Why? Anybody else? If you look at it, it happens at around 2008. That's the time of financial crisis. So it's not that technology got better. It's just less ships were moving around. So that's why the number got lower. It's overall. It's yeah, yeah. Because of, if you look at it, it happens at 2000, around 2008, right? Because of the financial crisis, there was less transaction, less requests, less delivery. So there was just a lesser number of ships going around, and that's why the number was decreased. It was not that technology got better or anything like that. Yeah, in 2 years, technology didn't grow up all of a sudden for the numbers to drop that much. And this is a global map of the lost ships. The dark blue, it's just for 1 year, from January of 2013 until December, and then the lighter blue is for 10 years. And overall, you see that you have like 417 cases. You average that over 10, you got 41.7. So um, if you look at 2013, then you got 18. So things, maybe you can say maybe things have gotten a little bit better, at least on the North American side. Um, so you can divide the incident to multiple parts as he did. I looked at it from the design aspects. So most of the ships are basically compartmentalized, and the easiest example that you can think of is like an ice cube. Is like an ice tray. Sorry, like an ice tray. And the reason that they do that is that if one part gets punctured, then water can just like flow to the to the other part. He also talked about Titanic. In Titanic, all these compartments, they were connected to each other, and because of that, when one part was punctured, and then water was flowed to the other sections, and that's why the ship was sunk. After that, they made a lot of, as you know, like design changes. But in 2012, there was another case, Concordia in Italy, and then in that case, even though the ship was compartmentalized, but then uh, those sections are related to each other with watertight doors. But human error left one of those compartments open, and as a result of that, then water was flooded to the other sections, and that incident, which is here, happened. But one of the solutions in that kind of cases is counter flooding. Anybody knows what is counter flooding? Say it again, please. Exactly, yeah. So when one compartment is punctured, then you flood other parts. But you have to be very careful because if you overdo it, then the whole ship is sunk. And every ship obviously has their own manual, and then they will tell you how much money you can put into those compartments. So I was asked by professors to talk about the Korean ferry, so I'll talk about it, even though it's a very sad topic. So the potential reasons, everybody, I guess, I've heard about the Korean ferry that was sunk in 2014, unfortunately, and there were a number of reasons for it. Some people argued that it was because of a collision, and if it was because of a collision, it must have been with a very long sort of an object because it flooded multiple compartments at the same time. Another reason that was mentioned was the hasty maneuvers that caused the ship's cargo to move around, and that changed the center of gravity, and as a result, it was tilted. And the third one was the unstable design. The ship was originally designed in Japan, and the company basically bought a used ship, but then they decided to renovate it, and they add like an art gallery on the top of it, and that added like 100 tons more than what the ship was designed to support, and that was one of the basically major reasons. So it was unstable design that was not even allowed to happen. So that was one of the major reasons. And also, there's this thing, it's called incline test, and that was not performed after the design was done. And supposedly, if they did that incline test would have shown that the design is not following the guidelines. And incline test basically tests it does an analysis on the center of gravity of the ship to see if it's basically if it's following the guidelines. And at the end, also, the ferry was loaded twice as much cargo as it was approved. And also, the cargo was not properly secured. And that was another reason. I didn't mention it here, but I read somewhere that the cargo was also not properly secured. And that was another reason. Um, Also, the captain that used to basically be in charge of that ship was not in charge in that day. And because the cargo was not the cargo was more than what it was supposed to be, and it was also not properly secured, and it was also given to another crew that was not as experienced. He did some hasty maneuvers, and that caused the ship basically to tilt. Um, One curious thing that I read is that the crew told the passengers to stay inside when they were organizing the evacuation. So even though when the ship was sinking, the passengers were told to stay where they are, which was due to improper training of the crew. After that, they were interviewing the crew, and then they said that they actually didn't know what to do. And that was the result of negligence and corruptions because the people who were auditing the whole process, they were bribed. So this is basically a simple diagram that I found of the cause. If you look at it, this is a pretty sad number. They spent only $2 on training of the crew, not $2 million, not $2,000, not $22. I checked it on the training of the crew, and because of that, when that incident happened, the crew didn't actually know what to do, and they were telling the kids, because they're high school kids, to stay on the ship when the captain was actually like leaving the ship himself. So if you want to look at it, the main reason would be adding, if you hit here, the top-heavy design that was not approved because of adding the art gallery and then improper training of the crew. Those were probably the main reasons for that to happen. And 304 high school children died. So salvaging is basically the process of trying to recover the ship or its cargo. It includes different things: towing or refloating the ship, or patching it or repairing it. Any of these four falls into the category of salvaging. And it has, as you can guess, three types. Offshore salvaging. Offshore salvaging is, as you might guess, it's when you're trying to basically save the ship or its cargo while the ship is already in the open ocean. Harbor salvage is basically the same thing, except that, as the name suggests, it happens in the harbor, and obviously it's a lot less complicated. And sometimes the ship is not actually sinking or foundering; it's the cargo that's creating the problem. This is mostly the case when there is an environmental danger. I'll get an example um, to you guys, and what is cargo. There are times it's more important to save the cargo than to save the ship. This is the salvage operations of the Korean ferry. If you like to take a look at it, it's not the actual thing. Right. So, like I said, there are some cases in which it's more important to save the cargo, and sometimes the ship itself is pretty safe, but then the cargo has created a problem. This was another incident that happened in Korea. It's kind of similar to the case that happened in the coast of Mexico in the States, but this one happened also in west coast of Korea, and in 2012, and this one re released something around 2,547. This is what I found, of crude oil that was spread over 370 kilometers over the west coast of Korea, and an oil tanker that was moving from the Middle East was collided by a crane barge from Samsung, and that created the incident. And they did not actually manage to control it for several months, and that caused by wind and the currents, it was spilled over almost the whole west coast, and it kind of ruined the fish industry of the west coast in Korea. This is one of the incidents that the cargo is actually more important than the ship itself. And the cause, as you can guess, was the human error. It was a navigation problem and negligence of these people, and also the navigation control based on what Samsung, I read in the Samsung report that they said that there was a malfunction of the navigation control. So that was the cause of it. Any questions? So what's the common element that you guys think it was between the ferry and the spirit oil incident? Great. And what do you think is the way to address it? There are two ways to say unmanned ships, and you can either train humans to get better, or you can use AI. And which one do you think would be less costly? Good to go. All right. All right. Any more questions? All right. Okay. Thank you.